It's my pleasure to present this paper here. Actually, this paper is kind of accidental product because when I teach economic sociology, I try to bring something very new. So that's the approach, which is developed by the Professor Mackenzie in Professor Williams' Institute. And but students say they don't understand that. But that is a very important approach to study financial system. So Mr. Ye is my student, and he has done a very excellent job on the study on the underground gambling system in Taiwan. So he told me some phenomena. I think that makes sense for this approach. So and also there is an e-society project. So I think that will be interesting to see some unusual story about how internet is used for society. So because time is limited, so I will directly go to the issue. So what's the performativity approach? It sounds kind of difficult to understand, but it's serious like this. Traditionally, economy sociology debate with economics, and because we don't believe the economy activity is overwhelmingly dominated by rational calculation. So that's the whole debate about imbalance. The idea for imbalance is that social relation in economic activity, social relationship actually embed with the economic activity. So the performativity, they have a different view on what's the role of economics in economy. They say if you look at especially a lot of financial markets, they are created, not observed by, but created by those economic theory. You first have a lot of like asset pricing, you have a lot of discount theory, and then you have a derivative market, a lot of very complicated financial market. So these facts actually inspire deep thinking about what should we understand the rational behavior. Because in the past, sociology tend to say, no, people are not that rational. And now we have a new perspective. Yeah, wait a minute, people are rational, but how do they make the rational calculation? Where are those tools from? And that's a social process. That's what we should focus. So there's the idea, a little bit difficult to understand, called disentanglement and reframing. They say that you want to make calculation, you try to extract the things out of their original context, and then reframing it in the new context, you make calculation. So I put it in the simplest way. Of course, the theory is much more complicated than this. So this is a process generally, traditionally sociologists tend to ignore because we tend to say, look, the social relationship is still there. But we forget that when you make any calculation, any transaction, you must kind of disentanglement, try to put things out of context. You make a car, for example, in a transaction of car, you manufacture a car involves the relationship between firms, employees, workers. But when the car is sold, this goes to very different contexts. So that's the basic idea of the performativity approach. It says that when we study the economy, the rational calculation, we need to look at how do they disentangle those things out of the context, from the context, and reframe it to become a new form that can be calculated. So that's the idea called calculating agencies. So I just, so I made a show, I will go back this later if we have time, because that's kind of theoretical comparison. I want to directly go to the empirical, because I think it's more easier to understand what I'm talking about. So this is, let's say, the 六合彩, the underground Mark 6 in Taiwan. Actually, Mark 6 is a lottery system in Hong Kong, so I have a very short thing about how it works. So it's that you make a bet from the retailer and you make a bet with the retailer, and then the authority of this game, they will every week they will run these things and they will pick 6 numbers, and so that's a very, I think, easy to understand. That's just how the lottery system works. And if you pick the number you pick perfectly match the number drawn from this process, and then you make a big fortune. So it's extremely popular in Hong Kong. So yeah, so you can see that's how they get the number. Yeah.
You don't have to wait.
Okay. Okay. So we done with it now. So now it's going to go. So this game is only you can only buy the lottery in Hong Kong. But this game have tremendous influence on Taiwan. And also, I noticed some literature say in mainland China, people actually they cannot buy this lottery, but they use the number as a target for gambling. So that's how I say the underground Marxist system is that a lot of Taiwanese use the number of this process from Hong Kong as their target of gambling and create an illegal underground but extremely popular activity. You can go everywhere to see people talk about numbers. And believe me, they are not talking about mathematics. They are talking about this thing. So that's the system, how the system works. I project because it's okay. So that's the general pattern, and they are general ordinary people you see in the marketplace, in factory, everywhere. And they made a bet with the middleman. In our world, we call it 庄家. And so they go to middleman. Generally, this is these guys are those they know very well from their everyday life. They are colleagues in factories. They are shop owner in the same street. They are the shop owner. They are maybe classmates in high school, and that's what our field work from. So in this relationship, it's heavily rely on the existing social relationship. You don't make a bet with the one you don't know. And the middleman is like a retailer, so he collects the bet and then he transfers the bet to a bookmaker, which bookmaker in our language we call it 主头. And then he kind of collect the bet and run the game. And the target is the Hong Kong Marxist. So this is how the system works. So this system has some, that's how they report, because when you make the bet, you just make a phone call, and then the middleman will give this sheet to the bookmakers by fax or so. So people call it the paperboard system. That's the traditional way people make this kind of gambling. So they have some features. The first is network-based system. So bettors only make a bet with those they know well. And the second is, even we see a system, actually because that's illegal. So people only know his middleman. If he wins, he get a prize from his middleman. He don't know who is his bookmaker. So even though the system finally is around that end, but to only know, it's not like a legal lottery system. You make a bet from the retailer, but you get money from those bookmakers. But that's not the same thing. Bookmaker they distribute the money, but you only ask for your middleman if you win the game. So that's a lack of hierarchical control. And the third thing is very important. In our field where we found that that's a social entertainment. That's not a purely individual pursuit of wealth. That's also because people like to talk about numbers, and when people gather and after in the marketplace and everywhere, that's become an entertainment to talk about which number come out this week and what's the hidden rule. So here is kind of what is the relationship with this practice with the, I say, performativity, is that people don't simply make a guess. People try to find the hidden rules. That's what I call grassroots data. And I don't want to offend any expert of data mining, because I know that this is not data mining. And data mining have a very strong statistical base and mathematical base. I fully realize that. I just want to say what people want to do is, people will purchase some book which full the whole record of the Marxists, the number drawn by Marxists in the past, and they try to by their way try to find out whether there are hidden rules by their own way. So here is an example we find in the field is that so people look at so for example they look at when you got 4, got 7, and then after 3 periods you got 14 and 23, and they got twice. So they think, yeah, this is a rule. Once you see 4 and 7, then you know that after 3 weeks, there will be 14 and 23. And I use a simplest example, and sometimes this kind of calculation or guess may become very complicated. They even try to develop some computer programs to run these things. So that's how they do. And then, so it's kind of, you are kind of perform some calculation. You make calculation, even though we from a scientific perspective, this seems to baseless. But in a way, the process is kind of rational. They are not like making a guess or like what they dream in, what they see in the dream. It kind of try to say there's a rule. So what's the impact of this? It's kind of like a financial system. So because that's what I say, that's a social network base. So people talk about this. People like to talk about which number will come out next week. So this information, if some version of this rule become popular, everybody will make the same bet. So that creates a systematic risk for the system. Because if the bets evenly distributed, the bookmaker will make money anyway. But if the bet is overwhelmingly concentrated in a few numbers, then once the number really match, the system will bankrupt. So it's this kind of calculating activity create unexpected risk for the whole system. And we call it, if we bankrupt, we have to go or run away. So you cannot pay all the price, so you have to run away and disappear for about 10 years. That's quite often in this kind of system because so how do the bookmakers deal with that? That's a practice called bet closing. So they often very carefully watch which number become popular recently. So they can kind of close it as early as possible to tell the middleman, say, don't receive that bet anymore. But this process, so they have to know what the rules people know, because people think that's the true, and which number people will pick in the next game. So that's how they try to bet closing in our language or phone pie. They will close some bets if they found that's too popular, and to avoid bankruptcy. However, because as I say, that's a social network system, so it's often compromised because they know each other well. So, for example, the middleman, if they say, I don't receive this bet anymore, but the bettors are their friends. They are the people they see every day. They say, please let me bet this bet. I guess if I can get it and I can make big fortune, this kind. We have a lot of this kind of social interaction. And also between the middleman and the bookmaker, they will say, look, we do business for 20 years, right? And now I really need this bet. So this kind of negotiation often seriously compromise the original attempt of bet closing. And that's become a very important issue in this system, is how do they control the bet closing. And in the whole, I would say, paper-based system, that is, you don't know you don't have the total control, you don't have a systematic control. You have to rely on the social networks. On the one hand, support the system, on the other hand, create this risk. And you have compromise your effort to kind of close this bet. So that's the reason that's come out to internet, because until now, we will say that what's about the internet, e-society, there's nothing about in this. But that's the recently emerged form of the same Marxist gambling. Is they call in computable, in everyday language, they call it 电脑版. So that's that the bookmaker, they don't use the old system like a network. They create a website. And if you want to make a bet, you can apply. You apply for a password, and they will tell you to put some money in the account. He tell you, and that's kind of in the beginning, it's from a small amount of money, a small bet, and then you can, if you have a good credibility, both sides have good credibility, then they increase the money you go into the bet. So that's a very popular one. So I get a web page here. That's how it works. So you have this, and then you kind of turn the social network system to a virtual community of gambling. That's how the network influences this. And so go back to my concern about calculation, the control of systematic risk, and then we have a very different way. And because the system can automatically control. They don't need to chase what's the popular number anymore. They can say, we just make an upper limit for every number. And when you exceed the risk, you now can calculate the systematic risk. Because once any bet, with any number, the bet exceeds the upper limit, then you can automatically close, and people cannot bet on that number anymore. So that's the page here. See, that's called phone pie. So please see here. That's to say, the system just come out say this number you cannot do that anymore. So that's the whole computer board system, and that's how people make betting on this system. So, but there are some limitations. Actually, it's so good for a bookmaker, right? Because you can control all the system and it transforms the social relationship. But what we find in our field work is that actually social relationship is not a thing you can so easily transform. And also because those participants in the Marxist underground system, they are generally older, less educated, and have a lower socioeconomic status, and they are not that familiar with the computer system. So yes, a lot of bookmakers try to transform the whole system to this internet-based one. But it's not that successful because people still tend to go to your friend, those middlemen, not your friend, go to your friend to make a bet. And also like to people discuss together will be the number next week. It's more interesting than you kind of sit in front of the computer, make a bet by yourself, and dreaming that you can win big money. So that's another dimension of this thing. So maybe in the future, the demographic change will expand the adoption of computer board. But nowadays, it's limited, even though it emerged and somehow become popular, but have no sign of replacing the old system. So my conclusion first is how people make calculation and how people make calculation and the outcome of this calculation. I think is very important dimension when we want to know how the e-society or the internet influence social life, because now we have a very different. We have a different capability to control a lot of things. However, this creation of a new calculating agency may conflict with the existing social relationship, like what we see here, because basically making a bet is a social behavior that's totally in pursuit of individual wills. So we see evidence from both the traditional embeddedness approach to emphasize the social relationship, and we also see the evidence from the performativity approach to emphasize the calculation. So in the future, I believe this is somehow remote and somehow bizarre case, and can be applied in many occasions that we look at how this new way of calculation and the interaction with the existing social relationship, whether they transform that or they reject that, or kind of in a not so clear relationship like what I show here. So time is up, so that's my presentation. Thanks for your patience.
I'm the commentator. In order to save the time, I go directly to the comment on this paper. I have 3 comments on this paper because it's, the paper uses a performativity approach, arguing that the economic tool itself is a constitutive part rather than an external part of the economy. Therefore, they're trying to use the tool itself to explain the gamble itself, the gambling phenomenon. But my first comment is the data itself seems to support the socially embedded approach rather than support the performativity approach.郑力轩already presented the people don't like computer board. People don't really like the traditional paper board. Why they like paper board? That is because it's demographic composition of the pattern. They are rural, aged, low-educated population, and who are very familiar with the old paper board, and they don't like the new computer board. Therefore, the use of the new technology seems not very popular in this new game, and therefore, it seems that the technology is embedded in the society rather than use the external gambling and force people to use that. Therefore, I think the argument seems a little bit opposite to argument. But secondly, my comment is really that performativity approach is still useful to the Marxist gamble. I think the presentation is very interesting because it's, people, I think this is very similar to Professor Robert Williams present this morning about the social shaping of the technology, because the rural people really use local knowledge to recreate a grassrooted data mining technique in order to make sense what the lottery will come out. That means that the local people create their own technology in order to make a bet. And therefore, I think it's still a very useful approach in order to understand why the Mark 6 gamble in Hong Kong transferred to Taiwan and then come up a new tech. Therefore, I think you need to have a more detailed study on why people are using or inventing that kind of new technology. I think your description, your description on the phenomena of the grassrooted data mining or local knowledge is very interesting and it's fascinating, and you can see how people are using technology by their own way. This is a second comment. The third comment is, I think, because our main theme of this conference is e-society, and I still think that there is a good case to do comparative study, because right now there are emerging by internet or by digital system on doing a lottery, for example, like sport lottery, and every few weeks we have the betting that is like the whole population is engaging in that kind of gambling. But those gambling systems are really based on computer technology. And I don't really know what are the differences. And today, I think today or yesterday newspaper, there is a winner, always win from the lottery. And he said on the newspaper, don't trust computer selected number. You can select by yourself by doing study. This is a very, very good case of grassrooted data mining. So even in this very highly digital mediated lottery system, people are still believing that they can use grassrooted technology in order to win the betting. Therefore, I think this is a very good case to do the comparative study. The Liu Hecai is more traditional and based on rural population, but the other is more, I can say, is more urban, middle class, or educated people. But they are still believing their own grassrooted technology. So if you do the more comparative study, and you can see there's, we say, social shaping of technology or betting, and I think this you will be very interested. Okay, this is my comment. Okay.